My name is Peridot Winslow, and I'm 72 years old. Yes, I know, it's a strange name because my parents were mineral enthusiasts and my father was a geologist. When I was a kid, I hated my name. Everyone teased me, but as I got older, I got used to it. Now I even like it. At least it's memorable. I was born in 1952nd year in the small town of Grand Junction, Colorado. Our family was not rich but friendly. My father was really a geologist. My mother worked in a library. They instilled in me a love of precision and order. From my father, I got a penchant for math. From my mother, attention to detail. After high school, I went to the University of Colorado to study accounting. Not the most romantic specialty, I agree, but reliable. At 23, she married Jasper Winslow. He was an engineer who worked for a construction company. He was a serious, thorough man, something like my father. He always talked business without unnecessary words, but when necessary, he could support and protect me. We lived together for 34 years. Good years, peaceful. Jasper built us a house in the suburbs of Denver, small but cozy, with a garden where I grew tomatoes and roses. I was working as a chief accountant for the same construction company as my husband. Not because of patronage. It just so happened that my pedantry and honesty were in demand. We gave birth to our only son, Casper, quite late. I was already 31 years old. The doctor said there would be no more children, so Jasper and I were very fond of him. Maybe we spoiled him too much, I think so now. Jasper often said, Peridot, don't make the boy a wimp. Let him learn to solve problems on his own. But how could a mother's heart listen to reason? Casper grew up to be a difficult boy. I would not say that bad. No, he never seriously hooliganized, did not get involved with bad company. But there was some instability in him, a desire to find an easy way to success. He was average in school, though he had aptitude. He always said that he would find a way to get rich quickly, that working for his uncle all his life was the lot of losers. After high school, he went to college for business administration, but didn't finish. He dropped out in the third year, said that he did not need the theory, that he would understand everything in practice. Jasper was very upset, didn't even talk to his son for a week. And I, as always, tried to reconcile them, explaining to my husband that Casper is just looking for himself. 15 years ago, Jasper died of a heart attack. Suddenly, at work. I remember that day down to the smallest detail. We'd had a fight in the morning over some nonsense. He wanted to fix the fence, and I told him we could hire a handyman. The last words he said to me were, Peridot, you spend too much on nonsense and you'll regret it later. I didn't know it was a prophecy at the time. After my husband died, I was left alone with Casper, who was 23 years old. He was working in a car dealership at the time, selling used cars. He liked the job. He said he could persuade people that he had a talent for sales. The salary was not bad, plus a percentage of sales. I thought my son had finally found his calling, but 2 years later, he was fired. It turned out he'd sold a car with hidden defects, and when the buyer demanded a refund, Casper tried to cover it up. The scandal was serious. The owner of the salon did not want to ruin his reputation because of one employee. Casper then said that he was framed, that he was not guilty of anything, that the buyer himself did not know about cars. Then there was a job at an insurance company. He quit after 6 months, saying that the boss didn't like him. Then a manager at an electronics store. He didn't stay long either, complaining about the low salary. Then a few other places. There was always a reason to leave. That colleagues are bad, that the work is boring, that there are no prospects. All the while I was working, saving money. After Jasper died, I sold the house. It was too big for one person, and the memories were hard. Bought a small apartment in downtown Denver, invested the rest in deposits and stocks. By retirement, saved a decent amount of money, about $1,200,000. By Colorado standards, not bad for an ordinary accountant. 3 years ago, Casper married Octavia Blackwell, a girl 10 years younger than him, beautiful, ambitious. She worked in a bank as a loan officer, earning even more than Casper. Smart, educated, always knew what she wanted. I was happy at first. I thought that she would be a good support for my son, teach him responsibility. I immediately liked Octavia for her practicality. Not that she was cold, but it was obvious that she was used to calculate every step. When they met, Casper was working for an air conditioning company. The work was physically demanding, but the pay was good, especially in the summer. Octavia said to me, "Mrs. Winslow, I'm going to help Casper find himself. He has potential. He just needs to channel his energy in the right direction." The wedding was modest. I paid for the restaurant and the music, and the young people were grateful. Octavia had chosen everything tastefully, without spending too much. Jasper would have approved. He always said that a wedding is not about luxury, but about the beginning of life together. After the wedding, Casper and Octavia rented an apartment near me. I visited them often, cooked dinner, helped with the household chores. Octavia worked late, Casper too, so I tried to make their life easier. The maternal desire to take care of did not disappear, even when my son turned 35. But gradually I began to notice that something was wrong in their relationship. Casper began to complain more often about work, saying that he was tired of being a cog in someone else's machine. Octavia agreed, adding that they had better ideas. They started making plans to start their own business, discussing different options, from an online store to a food delivery service. One rainy October day, Casper came to me unusually solemn. Usually he came in jeans and an old jacket, but here he showed up in that very expensive suit with a folder in his hands and a special sparkle in his eyes. I was just making apple pie, his favorite since childhood, and the smell of cinnamon made the kitchen especially cozy. "Mom, I need to have a serious talk with you," he said, carefully hanging his jacket on the back of a chair. I was immediately wary. When Casper started a conversation with words like that, it usually meant that he had again come up with another get-rich-quick scheme. "Sit down, son. Do you want tea?" I set a cup of steaming brew in front of him and sliced the pie. Casper nodded but didn't touch his food. Instead, he opened a folder and pulled out some printouts, charts, pictures. "Mom, Octavia, and I have found the perfect opportunity. Not some dubious venture, but a serious, well-researched business plan." He spread the papers out on the table, and I saw pictures of some kind of space, plans, spreadsheets with numbers. "We want to open a restaurant." I nearly choked on my tea. A restaurant? Casper, who knew how to fry eggs at best, wanted to open a restaurant? But I remained silent, determined to listen to the end first. "Look, Mom, it's not just a restaurant, it's a concept. Modern American cuisine with fusion elements. We studied the Denver market. There's a severe lack of mid-range establishments. There are either cheap eateries or very expensive restaurants, and the middle ground is almost non-existent." Casper spoke passionately, showing me pictures of other restaurants, explaining the menu concept, talking about the target audience. You could see that he had really taken the time to research the issue. This wasn't his usual 5-minute idea. "Octavia has done a financial analysis," he continued. "The profitability of the project will be 25% already in the first year. We'll find a space in the Highlands neighborhood. There's a burgeoning gourmet food scene there right now. Lots of young families with good incomes." I listened and thought about the fact that my son was finally talking like an adult. No childish fantasies about quick success, no promises of becoming a millionaire in 6 months. Numbers, market analysis, a clear plan. Maybe Octavia had really taught him how to think like a businessman. "What about experience?" I asked. "Casper, you've never worked in the restaurant business. It's a very difficult field. It's highly competitive." "Mom, that's why we spent so much time preparing." He pulled out another folder. "We took restaurant management courses. Octavia learned the specifics of working with vendors. Plus, we plan to hire an experienced chef and administrator. We'll handle the strategic management and we'll leave the operational issues to the professionals." Sounded reasonable. I've always told Casper that the most important thing in business is to know your strengths and weaknesses. If he realizes he can't cook, but can plan and promote, that's progress. At that moment, Octavia called. "Mrs. Winslow, good evening. Has Casper told you about our project yet?" A barely concealed excitement could be heard in her voice. "May I drive up? I want to show you our calculations in person." Half an hour later, Octavia was in my kitchen. She came in with a laptop and another folder of documents. Unlike her usual strict bank style, she was dressed more casually today, but still looked professional. "Mrs. Winslow, I understand your concerns. The restaurant business is indeed risky, but we've approached it as responsibly as possible. She opened her laptop and showed me a detailed presentation, graphs, tables, photos of successful restaurants with a similar concept. Look, we analyzed 15 similar establishments in Denver and other cities. We studied their menus, pricing policies, marketing strategies, determined the best value for money for our target audience. Octavia spoke convincingly, professionally. It was obvious that she had really immersed herself in the topic, studied all the nuances. This was no longer a childish dream of easy money. It was a serious business plan. We need a startup capital of $800,000, she continued. $400,000 to rent and renovate the space, $200,000 for kitchen equipment, $100,000 for furniture and interior, $100,000 for initial inventory and marketing. Casper added, Mom, I realize it's a lot of money, but this is our chance. I'm tired of working for other people, tired of getting pennies for my labor. I want to build something of my own, something I can pass on to my future children. His eyes lit up, and in that moment he reminded me of Jasper as a young man, just as determined, full of plans and hope. Jasper had dreamed of owning his own business too, but he always said that you had to first build up experience and money by working for others. Casper, what about banks? I asked. Octavia works at a bank, surely you can get a loan. Octavia shook her head. Mrs. Winslow, banks are very reluctant to lend to restaurants. The risks are too high, lots of variables. We're being offered a loan at 15% interest with real estate collateral. That's unrealistic. We simply won't be able to make that kind of payment in the first few months of operation. But we're not asking for money as a gift, Casper quickly added. We're offering a partnership. You'll become a co-owner of the restaurant. You'll get your share of the profits. Once the business pays off, we'll buy your share at market value. Octavia nodded. We're ready to make all the paperwork official. Partnership agreement, articles of incorporation, accounts, full transparency and control on your part. I kept silent, thinking over their proposal. On the one hand, the project looked well thought out. They had obviously spent a lot of time on preparation. On the other hand, $800,000 is almost all of my savings. If the project failed, I'd be left with nothing. Mom, I know what you're thinking, Casper said, as if he'd read my mind. You're afraid I'll let you down, like I've done before with other projects. But this is different. I've never been so serious, never prepared so thoroughly. Mrs. Winslow, Octavia added, I understand your fears. As a banker, I see many unsuccessful projects, but I also see successful ones. This project has a good chance of success if it's handled professionally. I looked at them, at my son, who for the first time in years was not talking about quick money, but about serious business, and at his wife, who could provide this business with professional management. Could this really be their chance? I need time to think about it, I said finally. This is a very serious decision. $800,000 is almost all of my savings. Of course, Mom. We understand. Take your time with the decision. But just be warned. The good space could go to the competition if we procrastinate too long. After they left, I sat in the kitchen for a long time, going through their paperwork. Everything looked convincing, professional. But Jasper's voice in my head kept repeating, Peridot, don't give your son more money than you can afford to lose. I didn't sleep all night. I lay there staring at the ceiling, and the same thoughts kept running through my head. $800,000, almost all of my savings. The money I'd been saving for 30 years, saving from every paycheck, investing in deposits, buying shares in trusted companies. I got up at 5 in the morning, brewed strong coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with a calculator. If I give away $800,000, I'll have $400,000. I could live on that money for 10 years at most. What if the project fails? What if in 6 months Casper comes to me and tells me that the restaurant didn't work out, that I have to close? I pulled an old picture of Jasper out of my desk drawer. It was taken on our silver wedding day. He's standing next to me in his best suit, his arm around my shoulders, smiling that understated smile I loved so much. Jasper, what would you do in my shoes? I quietly asked the picture. I knew the answer without words. Jasper had always been against giving Casper large sums of money. A boy has to earn his own bread, he used to say. If you're always bailing him out, he'll never learn to stand on his own 2 feet. After every time my son asked for money, we had long conversations. I remember Casper asking for $5,000 for a used car when he was 20. It was a nice car, practically new, and the price was fair. But Jasper said, "Let him save up, or take out a loan and pay it off himself. A man should be responsible for his own decisions." Casper took offense, didn't speak to his father for 2 weeks. And I, as always, tried to reconcile them. I secretly gave my son the money, told him not to tell his father. Jasper figured it out anyway. He saw the new car in the driveway. That's when we had our big fight. "Peridot, you're making him look weak," my husband said. "He needs to understand the value of money, needs to learn to accept the consequences of his decisions." But can a mother's heart be so hard? Can you watch your child suffer and not lend a helping hand? Jasper didn't understand it. Logic always trumped emotion in men. Mothers do the opposite. After my husband died, I felt guilty every time I helped Casper with money. Like I was betraying Jasper's memory, breaking his wishes. But how could I not? My son would come in upset, talking about his problems at work, his unfair boss, how he was unappreciated. And I would give him money. Not much, 1,000 or two, so that he could find a new place. Now it was not thousands, but hundreds of thousands. It was different money, different risks. I took out a notebook and began to write down the pros and cons, just as Jasper had taught me to do when making important decisions. Pros. Jasper was serious for the first time in years. He researched the market, drew up a business plan, and brought his wife with a finance background into the project. The restaurant business can be profitable with the right approach. They have a clear understanding of the target audience and the concept of the establishment. Cons. Casper has no experience in the restaurant business. This is an area with high competition and high risks. $800,000 is almost all of my savings. If the project fails, I'll be left with almost no livelihood. I reread the list several times. Logically, the cons outweighed the pros. Any financial advisor would have said, "Mrs. Winslow, don't risk all your savings on one project, especially in such an unpredictable field." But logic is one thing, and maternal feelings are another. I saw Casper change as he talked about the restaurant. There wasn't the feverish greed in his eyes that appeared when he talked about quick ways to get rich. It was the look of a man who had found his calling. And Octavia? I'd worked with people for years. I could read their eyes, their gestures, their intonation. Octavia didn't lie when she showed me her calculations. She really believed in the success of the project. Otherwise, she wouldn't have risked her reputation as a banker. My friend Ruth called. "We've been friends since high school. She's the only one who knows all my family business." "Peridot, are you crazy?" she said when I told her about Casper's request. "How many times has he let you down already? How much money have you already spent on his projects?" Ruth was right. Over the past 15 years, I'd given Casper about $50,000 on various promising projects. None of them had turned a profit. Vintage records, breeding tropical fish, selling homemade jewelry on the internet, all of these ideas ended the same way. But Ruth, it's different now. He's changed, grown up, and Octavia's around. She won't let him do anything stupid. Peridot, you say that every time you think he's going to wise up now, but he's still a dreamer looking for easy money. After talking to Ruth, I felt even more confused. On the one hand, my friend was right. Casper did let me down a lot. On the other hand, what if I missed his one real chance to be successful? That evening, I reread all the documents that Casper and Octavia had left behind. The business plan did look professional. They had studied the competitors, analyzed costs, and made a revenue projection for 3 years ahead. It wasn't an impulsive idea, but a well-thought-out project. I remembered Jasper's words shortly before he died. "Peridot, if something happens to the boy, you'll blame yourself for the rest of your life. It's better to give him a chance and lose money than not to give him a chance and regret it." We weren't talking about money then, but about whether or not we should let 20-year-old Casper go snowboarding in the mountains with his friends. Jasper was afraid of an accident, and I insisted that a young man should live life to the fullest. In the end, we allowed it, and everything turned out okay. Perhaps the principle is the same. Better to give your son a chance and risk the money than to refuse and then spend a lifetime thinking, what if? On the third day after their visit, I made a decision. Not with my mind, with my heart. I am a mother, and my job is to believe in my son, even when others don't. $800,000? Yes, that's almost all of my savings. But what good is money if you can't help the person you care about the most? But I've decided to make one condition. Not 800,000, but 980,000. An additional 180,000. It will be their initial working capital so that the restaurant did not suffocate in the first months of operation. If we were going to take a risk, we had to take a big risk to give the project the best chance of success. I called Casper. Son, I'm in, but on one condition. I'm not giving you 800 but $980,000. The extra money will be used for working capital. And one more condition. We draw up all the documents through a lawyer officially, without verbal agreements. There was silence for about 10 seconds. Then Casper spoke in an excited voice. Mom, are you serious? Are you really willing to help us? Seriously, Casper. This is my gift to you and Octavia, my contribution to your future. But remember, this is the last time I give you this kind of money. I just don't have any more. Mom, I won't let you down. I swear on my father's memory, I won't let you down. The meeting at the bank was scheduled for 10 o'clock Tuesday morning. I arrived half an hour early. I wanted to think it over again, to make sure I'd made the right decision. I sat in my car in the parking lot and looked at the bank building where Octavia worked. It was an ordinary glass and concrete office building, nothing special, but to me it symbolized the point of no return. Casper and Octavia arrived at 10 sharp. They looked solemn, he in that expensive suit, she in a strict business dress. Octavia carried a leather folder with documents, Casper a bouquet of white roses. Mom, these are for you, as a token of appreciation and respect, he said as he hugged me. The roses smelled fresh and hopeful. I clutched them to my chest and thought for sure Jasper would have said something like, Peridot, flowers are nice when you buy them with your own money. But Jasper was gone, and today was the day I had to make my own decision. The lawyer Octavia recommended was a middle-aged man with a neat beard and attentive eyes. Mr. Harrison specialized in corporate law, having handled the affairs of several restaurants in Denver. That reassured me. It meant he understood the specifics of the business. Mrs. Winslow, he said as we settled into his office. I've reviewed the documents Octavia handed me. I want to make sure you fully understand the terms of the deal. He opened a folder and pulled out several documents. You are investing $980,000 in the authorized capital of Casper's Kitchen, LLC, and receiving a 40% interest in the venture. I like the name Casper's Kitchen. Simple, catchy, with a hint of a homey atmosphere. Casper said they had a long time to choose between several options, but this one seemed the best. The 40% share means you will receive 40% of the profits, the lawyer continued. The remaining 60% is owned equally by Casper and Octavia, 30% each. They will handle the operational management of the restaurant. Octavia added, Mrs. Winslow, we've also made provisions for you to veto all major decisions. Changing concepts, selling equipment over $10,000, taking out loans. Your interests will be protected. That sounded reasonable. I was not going to interfere in the day-to-day management of the restaurant. In this, I did not understand anything, but I wanted to control strategic decisions by all means. One more important point, Mr. Harrison said. The contract stipulates a mechanism for buying out your share. If the restaurant is profitable in 3 years, Casper and Octavia can buy your share at market value, as determined by an independent appraiser. Casper leaned over to me. Mom, we don't want you tied to our business for the rest of your life. Once the restaurant gets back on its feet, we'll buy out your share and you'll get your money back plus profits. I nodded. The plan seemed fair. They get the startup capital, I get a stake in the business, and after a few years everyone is happy. The paperwork procedure took 2 hours. Mr. Harrison patiently explained every clause of the agreement, answered my questions, made small changes at my request. Octavia wrote down all the details in her notebook. It was obvious that she was used to the paperwork. When it came to signing, I froze for a second with pen in hand. $980,000. The number rattled around in my head like a haunting melody. It was money I'd been saving for 30 years, money I planned to live on in my old age. Mom, are you having doubts? Casper asked quietly. I looked at him, at Octavia, at the lawyer who waited patiently. No, son, I don't doubt it, and signed all the documents. After the bank, we went to see the premises that Casper and Octavia had chosen for the restaurant. It was in the Highlands, in a former furniture store. Large storefront windows, high ceilings, comfortable layout. It was about 200 square feet, enough to accommodate 50 seats plus kitchen and utility rooms. Look, Mom, Casper said excitedly, showing me different corners of the room. Here will be the main room, here the kitchen, and in this corner, we'll make a little bar area for those who just come in for coffee or a glass of wine. Octavia pulled out a clipboard with a design project. We want to create a modern American bistro atmosphere. Natural materials, wood, brick, metal. No ostentatious luxury, but classy and cozy. On the screen of my tablet, I saw beautiful interiors. Warm colors, soft lighting, comfortable furniture. The premises really had potential. Good location, near an office center, a residential complex, a small park, lots of foot traffic, convenient parking. I began to understand why they had chosen this particular location. How much is the rent? I asked. $8,000 a month, Octavia replied. For this size and location, that's a fair price. Plus, we agreed with the landlord on a grace period. The first 3 months, we pay half the rate while we renovate. In the evening, we went for dinner at one of the restaurants that Casper and Octavia had been studying as competitors. It was a small, cozy place with open kitchen and democratic prices. Casper kept writing something down in his notebook, analyzing the menu, paying attention to the service. See, Mom, they have good food, but poor service. And over there, he pointed to a neighboring table, the waiter brought the order after 20 minutes. That's too long for this type of establishment. Octavia nodded, adding her observations about pricing and marketing. I listened to their professional talk and thought they were really serious about the business. These were not the reveries of amateurs, but the analysis of people who had studied the matter thoroughly. Casper, I said when we were about to leave, I want you to understand, this money is really all I have. I won't be able to help you anymore if anything goes wrong. He took my hand in his. Mom, I understand, and I swear to you, I won't waste this money. Octavia and I will work day and night to make this restaurant a success. You'll see. In a year's time, you'll be proud of us. Octavia added, Mrs. Winslow, this project is very important to me too. I'm leaving a stable job at the bank, risking my career. We all have a stake in its success. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in many days. The decision had been made, the documents had been signed, the money had been transferred. Now all that was left was to wait and believe. Believe in my son, in his wife, in their common dream. I woke up at 7 in the morning with an unusual feeling of lightness. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel heavy. That constant worry about Casper's future. The decision had been made, the money had been handed over, and now it was up to them. I brewed a strong cup of coffee and sat down to breakfast, planning my day. I wanted to go to the garden center to buy tulip bulbs for the spring, then to see Ruth and tell her how the meeting at the bank had gone yesterday. Ruth will probably grumble that I was unreasonable, but deep down she'll understand. She has grown children too, and she knows what a mother's heart is like. At 9:30, the intercom rang. It was strange. Casper didn't usually arrive so early, and he had the keys. But when I pressed the button, no one answered. I waited a few minutes, and then went out to check the mailbox. Maybe the mailman had misunderstood something. In the box was a white envelope with no address, just my name written in Casper's familiar handwriting. That's odd. Why write a note when you could just call? I went up to the apartment and opened the envelope. Inside was a piece of paper, folded in half. I unfolded it and read only 2 lines, written in hurried handwriting. Goodbye, old woman. Thanks for the money. At first, I didn't understand. I read it again, then again. The words were simple, but the meaning of them didn't make sense to me. Goodbye, old woman. Who wrote that? It was definitely Casper's handwriting, but he'd never called me an old woman. Even as a child, when he was angry, he'd say, Mom, or at most, Mother. I sat down on the couch, holding the note with trembling hands. Thanks for the money. What did that mean? Yesterday, we'd agreed to a partnership to do business together. What thanks for the money? What goodbye? I dialed Casper's number. Long beeps. Then the answering machine said, The caller is temporarily unavailable. Tried again, same result. I called Octavia and her phone didn't answer at all, just short beeps. My heart pounded so hard that my temples rumbled. I felt my legs give out and I fell back onto the couch. What's going on? Why aren't they answering? What did the note mean? I tried to calm down to find a logical explanation. Maybe it was a stupid joke? Casper sometimes liked to make inappropriate jokes. Or was Octavia playing a joke on me? But no, it wasn't funny. Nobody makes jokes about $980,000. Maybe someone else wrote the note. Maybe something had happened, they'd been robbed, and the robbers had decided to mess with me? I grabbed that thought like a lifeline. Yeah, that's probably the explanation. They'd call me now, tell me what happened. But the phones were silent. I called every 15 minutes. The result was the same. The subscriber is temporarily unavailable. As if they'd turned off the cell phones on purpose. By noon, I couldn't stay at home anymore. I went to their apartment, rang the doorbell, knocked, nobody answered. I took out the spare keys Casper had given me for emergencies and went in. The apartment was empty. Not just empty, cleaned out. Gone were personal belongings, photos, documents. There were no clothes in the closets, no makeup and toothbrushes in the bathroom. All that was left was furniture and appliances. It was as if no one had ever lived here. On the kitchen table was another note. Sorry, but there was no other way. Don't look for us. The same Casper handwriting, the same hurry, and not a word of explanation. I ran around the empty apartment like a hunted animal. I opened closets, drawers, checked every corner. Maybe they'd left some clue, some explanation, something. But there was nothing. They were gone, like they vanished into thin air. I went home and started calling their cell phones again. Nothing. So I called the bank where Octavia worked. The receptionist said Octavia had tendered her resignation yesterday and was no longer at work today. Like yesterday? I interjected. But she was with me at another bank yesterday. We were doing paperwork. I'm sorry, Mrs., but I can't discuss personnel matters with outsiders. The secretary replied coldly and hung up. So Octavia had planned the dismissal in advance. Even before we met at the bank, she knew she was quitting her job. But why didn't she tell me? We talked about her combining her bank job with running the restaurant for the first few months. By late afternoon, I finally realized something had happened, something very bad. People don't just disappear. They don't leave their jobs without explanation. They don't turn off their phones after receiving a large sum of money. I remembered Casper's neighbor, Mrs. Connor, an older woman who was always aware of everything that was going on in the house. She lived a floor above and often complained about the noise from their apartment. Maybe she saw something. Went to see her tonight. Mrs. Connor opened the door in her robe and slippers, clearly about to go to bed. Oh, Mrs. Winslow, and I was just about to call you, she said as she let me into the hallway. Your Casper and his wife were moving out today. There was such a commotion early this morning, lugging suitcases, loading something into the car. What time was that? I asked, feeling my heart pounding in my heels again. About 6 o'clock in the morning. I was wondering where they were going so early. They called a car, not their own. A big minivan. Casper was carrying the heavy suitcases, and that girl, his wife, was carrying the bags. And then I saw them burning something in the yard. Burning? Yeah, some papers. They were burning them in a metal bucket. I wanted to say it was against house rules, but then I thought it was none of my business. So they did leave. Early in the morning, while the whole house was asleep. Took only the essentials, left the rest behind, and they burned some papers. Why burn papers if you're just moving out? Mrs. Connor, did they say where they were going? Oh, no, they didn't. All I heard him say to his wife was, drag it fast, the plane won't wait. That's all. An airplane. So they didn't just move to another part of town. They flew away. But where to? And more importantly, why? I stayed up all night trying to find a logical explanation for what was happening. Maybe they're in some kind of trouble with the law. Maybe Octavia was accused of bank fraud and they had to go into hiding. But then why take money from me? Or maybe it's all a planned scam. Maybe they never intended to open a restaurant. Maybe all these business plans, calculations, meetings with a lawyer, all this was a game to lure me out of my money? No, it can't be. Casper is my son. He may be reckless, irresponsible, but he's not a crook. He can't steal almost $1 million from his own mother. It's unthinkable. But the note was on the table, the phones were silent, and the apartment was empty. The facts spoke for themselves. In the morning, I went to their house again, hoping I had dreamed it all last night. But the apartment was just as empty. This time I scrutinized the place where they had burned the papers. There were charred bits left in the bucket, indecipherable scraps of text, a few numbers. One fragment was larger than the others. I could make out a few words. Flight 1247, and something that sounded like Bangkok or bank. The text was so damaged that it was impossible to tell for sure. Bangkok? That's in Thailand. Why would they fly to Thailand? They have no family, no friends, no business connections. It's the other side of the world. I sat in the yard with a charred piece of paper in my hands and tried to figure out what was happening to my life. Yesterday I had a son, a daughter-in-law, common plans for the future. And today, there was only an empty apartment and a mysterious note. Goodbye, old woman. I spent the next 3 days in a kind of stupor. I couldn't eat, slept lightly, and kept checking my phone, hoping that Casper would call and explain everything. Maybe he had amnesia. Maybe he'd been kidnapped. Any explanation seemed more likely than my own son betraying me. Ruth came every day, bringing food, trying to distract me. But what could she say? I warned you, didn't I? Words didn't help. Nothing helped. Friday night, Sheila McGregor, an old acquaintance of mine with whom we'd been family friends since Jasper was alive, called. Sheila lived in California, and we kept in touch through social media, occasionally calling each other. Peridot, honey, are you okay? She asked in an excited voice. I saw pictures of your Casper on Facebook. Did he win the lottery? My hands went cold. What pictures, Sheila? Oh, come on, he posted a whole album yesterday. He and his wife are at some tropical resort, luxury villa, pool, ocean. He captioned it, "A new life begins today. I'm so happy for him. I always knew the boy would make a good one." I swallowed hard. Sheila, can you send me a link to those pictures? There's something wrong with my internet. I can't get on Facebook. Sure, honey. I'll send it right away. A minute later, a message arrived on my phone with the link. I opened it with trembling fingers. What I saw surpassed my worst fears. Casper and Octavia in front of a luxurious villa with whitewashed walls and a red-tiled roof. Turquoise pool, palm trees, ocean view. They smiled for the camera while holding cocktails with umbrellas. The next photo is Octavia in a designer bikini lounging on a poolside lounger. She is wearing sunglasses that cost at least $500. I saw such in the window of a boutique. Another photo. Casper driving some kind of sports car. A convertible. Bright red, obviously expensive. In the background, tropical landscapes, palm trees, white sand. The last photo was captioned, "Renting a villa for a year, the best decision of our lives. Thailand, we are in love with you. Renting a villa for a year, in Thailand, with my money." I put the phone down and closed my eyes. So there was no restaurant, no business plan, no serious intentions. All this time, they'd been planning to take my money and run away to a tropical resort. Live like millionaires on their old mother's dime. $980,000. In Thailand, with that money, you can live like a king for a few years. Rent a luxury villa, drive expensive cars, eat in the best restaurants, buy designer clothes. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial Sheila's number. Peridot, what's wrong? You sound weird. Sheila, I said, struggling to pronounce the words. They stole money from me. Almost $1 million. Cheated me out of it and ran away. There was silence in the receiver. Then Sheila exhaled. Oh my God, Peridot. I didn't know. I'm so sorry. What are you going to do? What am I going to do? That's a good question. Go to the police? File a lawsuit? Fly to Thailand and demand my money back? All of those options seemed pointless. Casper and Octavia had obviously thought of everything in advance. After talking to Sheila, I took another close look at the photos. I tried to determine exactly where they were. One of the pictures showed a sign with the name of the resort, something in Thai, but it was illegible. But another photo showed a restaurant sign in English, Paradise Beach Resort, Phuket. Phuket. I knew that. One of the most expensive resorts in Thailand. I opened the internet and found this resort's website. The cost of renting luxury villas from $15,000 to $30,000 a month. If they rented a villa for a year, they had already spent a third of my money just on housing. I scrolled through the hotel gallery and found a villa similar to the one in Casper's photos. Presidential villa overlooking the ocean, $25,000 a month. $300,000 a year, plus car, plus food, plus entertainment. My money was melting like ice cream in the sun. Called Ruth and told her about the pictures. "Peridot, call the police right away," screamed my friend. "This is the ultimate fraud. They've swindled you out of your money." But I gave it to them myself. I signed all the documents voluntarily. Under false pretenses, they said they were going to open a restaurant, but they were planning to run away to Thailand. It's a fraud, Peridot. Ruth was right. Technically, it is indeed a scam. Casper and Octavia had gotten money under false pretenses. But what good would it do? Thailand is a distant country. The laws are different there. American police can't arrest them. But it was worth a try, just so I wouldn't feel like a complete victim. The next day, I went to the police station. The officer on duty, a young guy in his 30s, listened to my story with sympathy but without much enthusiasm. "Mrs. Winslow, you see, this is a complicated situation. Technically, you voluntarily gave the money to your son. We have documents to prove that it was an investment in a business. But there is no business. They cheated me. That has to be proved. And it's very difficult to prove deception in such cases. They can say that plans changed, that the restaurant turned out to be an unprofitable project." The officer was right. Even the "goodbye, old woman" note was not a direct admission of fraud. Rather, it was cruelty, but not a crime. "What about the fact that they fled to another country? That's not a crime, Mrs. American citizens have the right to travel, even if they don't return your calls." I walked out of the station empty-handed and heavy-hearted. The police are right. It will be nearly impossible to prove fraud. Casper and Octavia have thought of everything. The paperwork is official. There were no direct threats or coercion. That evening, sitting alone at home, I opened Casper's Facebook again. He'd added a few more pictures. Dinner at an expensive restaurant, a yacht trip, shopping in boutiques. Each photo was like a knife to the heart. Under one of the photos, Octavia wrote a comment. "Finally, we can live the life we deserve. Thank fate for this gift." A gift. $980,000 of my savings they considered a gift from fate. That night, I finally realized that my son had betrayed me. Not just disappointed or let me down, but betrayed me. Coldly, calculatingly, without a shadow of regret. And while they are enjoying a luxurious life in a tropical paradise, I sit in an empty apartment and calculate how many months I have enough money left. But the worst part wasn't that I lost the money. The worst part was that I lost my son. I spent 3 days in a kind of daze, looking at pictures of Casper from Thailand and feeling sorry for myself. I sat on the couch, drank tea without sugar. Even sugar seemed like a luxury I couldn't afford. I counted and counted the money I had left, made plans to save money, thought about having to sell the car. But on the 4th day, when I woke up in the morning, I suddenly felt angry. Not self-pity, not resentment, just anger. Pure, bright, energetic anger. Why the hell was I sitting here snotting while those two were having fun with my money? Jasper always said, "Peridot, if you're attacked, don't complain. Fight back." Then he was talking about the bullies at school who teased me because of my unusual name. But the principle is the same. When you've been robbed, you don't cry, you act. I got up from the couch, took a shower, dressed in my best business suit, and sat down at my desk with a notebook. I needed to analyze the situation soberly, as Jasper had taught me to do with any problem. What did I know for sure? Casper and Octavia received $980,000 from me 3 days ago. They're in Thailand now, spending that money on a life of luxury. But the money couldn't just disappear overnight. There must be something left in their accounts. And then I remembered an important detail. 2 years ago, when Casper was applying for a job at an air conditioning company, he had to open a new bank account to receive his paycheck. He was having credit problems because of an overdue car loan, so he asked me to be a guarantor. The bank required a power of attorney to manage the account in order to process the guarantor. Standard procedure. If the primary borrower cannot fulfill obligations, the guarantor gets the right to control his finances. Casper signed the power of attorney without looking, saying, "Mom, I don't have any money anyway. Control whatever you want." The power of attorney was in my safe with other important documents. I pulled it out when I was helping Casper with his tax returns. He was always messing up his paperwork. But I never used it to monitor his accounts. What if that power of attorney is still valid? What if I could access his bank transactions? I found the document and reread it carefully. The power of attorney was for 5 years, with the term not expiring until a year and a half later. And most importantly, it said, the trustee is authorized to freeze accounts in case of suspected fraudulent transactions. Fraudulent transactions. Getting money under false pretenses isn't fraud, but you can't just go to the bank. I needed someone to help me understand the legalities, and I remembered Michael Sterling. Michael was a senior manager at the same bank where Casper had an account. We'd met about 20 years ago when I was applying for a mortgage on a house. Michael was a young loan officer and I was a regular customer, but he impressed me with his honesty and professionalism. Over the years, our acquaintance grew into a friendship. Michael invited Jasper and I to corporate events and we met at family gatherings. After my husband died, Michael helped me with redeposits and gave me investment advice. An honest, decent man who could be trusted. I called Michael at lunchtime. "Peridot, how are you doing? Haven't heard your voice in a while," he said cheerfully. "Michael, I need your help. Serious help. Can we meet after work today?" There was an immediate note of concern in his voice. "Sure, Peridot. Is something wrong?" "I'll tell you when I see you. It has to do with my son's banking operations." We agreed to meet at a cafe near the bank at 6 in the evening. Michael showed up right on time. A tall, graying man in an austere suit with his usual serious expression. "Tell me what's up," he said as soon as we ordered coffee. I told him the whole story, from the request for money for the restaurant to the photos from Thailand. Michael listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I was done, he was silent for a long time, pondering what he had heard. "Peridot, this is a very serious situation. If it's as you describe, it's really a fraud. Getting money under false pretenses is a classic scheme. But the police said it would be difficult to prove fraud. In criminal law, yes, difficult. But in banking law, we have more options. If fraudulent transactions are suspected, we can freeze accounts until we find out." Michael pulled out his phone and checked something. "Do you have a power of attorney for Casper's account?" "Yes, here." I showed him the document. He scrutinized the text. "Good. The power of attorney is valid, and you have the right to control transactions, but you need grounds for blocking it. Would a threatening note work?" "Show me." I pulled out the photographed note. "Goodbye, old lady. Thanks for the money." Michael looked at it and nodded. That could work. The note could be interpreted as an admission of receiving money under false pretenses. Plus the sudden departure to another country immediately after receiving a large sum of money. Combined, it gives grounds for freezing the accounts. What if the money has already been transferred abroad? Then we won't get it back. But if some of the money is still in U.S. accounts, there's a chance to keep it. Michael explained the procedure to me. "Tomorrow morning, I need to go to the bank with a power of attorney and a statement of suspicious transactions. The bank must review the statement and freeze the accounts if there are grounds. But be warned, Peridot, this is a serious step. You are effectively accusing your son of fraud. There's no turning back." I looked at him firmly. "Michael, my son stole almost $1 million from me and fled to Thailand. How can there be a way back?" At home, I spent all night preparing the paperwork. I wrote a detailed statement outlining the whole story of the restaurant project. I attached copies of notes, printouts of photos from social media, proof that Casper and Octavia were in Thailand. I paid special attention to the time sequence of events, receipt of the money on Monday, disappearance on Tuesday morning, appearance of photos from the resort on Wednesday. All of this together looked like a pre-planned operation. By morning, I had a thick folder of paperwork ready to go. I dressed for the most important business meeting of my life and drove to the bank. Michael met me at the entrance. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," I replied, clutching the folder in my hands. Michael escorted me into the office of the bank's head of security, Mr. Harris, a man in his 50s with attentive eyes and a gray beard. "Mrs. Winslow," he said as he examined my paperwork, "the situation does look suspicious. Receiving a large sum of money followed by immediate disappearance to another country are classic signs of a fraudulent scheme. And you have the authority to do something about it? We have a duty to prevent money laundering and fraudulent transactions. If we have grounds, we can freeze a customer's accounts for up to 30 days to investigate." Mr. Harris took another close look at the power of attorney. "The document is properly executed and has not expired. You have the right to request account information." "And what is it?" I asked with bated breath. He worked with the computer for a few minutes, then looked up. "There are $342,000 in Casper Winslow's current account. There's another $128,000 in a savings account. $470,000, almost half of the stolen money, was still in the bank. So Casper hadn't had time to transfer it all overseas. Can you freeze these accounts?" "Based on the documents and power of attorney presented, yes, we can. We'll block them for 30 days, with the possibility of extension if we receive additional information from law enforcement." Mr. Harris typed up some orders, signed, sealed. Half an hour later, Casper's accounts were frozen. "What does that mean practically?" I asked. "Your son won't be able to withdraw money from those accounts, transfer it, use the bank cards linked to the accounts. In effect, those $470,000 are blocked until the circumstances are clarified." I walked out of the bank with a feeling I hadn't experienced in years, a sense of victory. A small, intermediate victory, but a victory nonetheless. Casper thought he had me wrapped around his finger, but it turned out the old mother wasn't so helpless. After blocking the accounts, I felt like I was finally in control. Casper and Octavia were rejoicing in Thailand, unaware that half of the stolen money was no longer available to them. But that was just the beginning. That evening, Michael called me at home. "Peridot, there's some interesting news. After locking the accounts, our system detected attempts to access them. Someone tried to log into Casper's online banking about an hour ago." "From Thailand?" "Judging by the IP address, yes. The attempts were repeated several times, then stopped. Apparently, they realized the accounts were blocked. So Casper has already found out about the blocking. I wonder what he's thinking right now. He's probably trying to figure out how it happened. Or maybe he's already figured out that I'm not the helpless old lady he thought I was." The next day, I went to the police station, to the same officer who had been less than enthusiastic about my first complaint the week before. This time, I had my trump cards, blocked accounts, and documents from the bank. "Mrs. Winslow," Officer Davis said as he studied my new paperwork, "the situation looks very different. The bank has confirmed suspicious activity in your son's accounts. That gives us grounds to prosecute the case. What about the notes? Can they be used as evidence?" "The goodbye, old lady. Thanks for the money, in conjunction with other circumstances, may be regarded as a circumstantial admission of fraud, especially since the money was obtained under the false pretense of investing in a restaurant." Officer Davis explained to me the further procedure. "I need to file a formal fraud report. The police will investigate, request documents from the bank, and try to locate the suspects. But since your son is overseas, arrest and extradition can take a long time. Thailand is not always willing to cooperate in such cases. And the blocked money? If the court finds fraud, the money will be returned to you as the injured party. But that could take months." I signed a criminal complaint against Casper Winslow and Octavia Blackwell for grand larceny fraud. It was strange to see my own son's name on the official charging document. In the evening, as I sat at home with a cup of tea, the phone rang. An unfamiliar number, an international code. I hesitated for a few seconds, then answered it after all. "Mom?" I heard Casper's familiar voice. He sounded worried, almost panicked. My first inclination was to hang up, but I pulled myself together and answered coldly, "What do you want?" "Mom, what's going on? I can't get into my accounts. The bank says they've been blocked at the request of a trusted person. Is that you? What do you think? Mom, you don't understand. We're in trouble here. We need the money. Unblock the accounts now. There wasn't an ounce of remorse in his voice, no attempt to apologize, only demands and indignation, as if I was the one who owed him something, not him who had stolen nearly $1 million from me. Casper, I said calmly, you wrote me goodbye, old woman, and ran off with my money to Thailand. What more money do you want from me? Mom, it's not what you think. We didn't run away. We just temporarily changed our plans. You can open a restaurant here in Thailand. It's even better. There's less competition. A restaurant in Thailand? I couldn't help but laugh. Casper, I saw your pictures on Facebook. A villa for $25,000 a month, yachts, expensive cars. What restaurant? There was silence on the phone. Then Casper spoke in a different tone, pleading, almost childlike. Mom, please don't do anything stupid. Unlock the accounts and we'll talk about everything. I'll explain it to you the way it is. Explain it right now. It's not convenient over the phone. Mom, you realize this is a different country, different laws. If we don't have access to money, we could get into serious trouble. And when you stole from your own mother, did you think about her problems? I didn't steal from anyone. We're partners. You signed the documents yourself. It's an investment, not a theft. An investment in your vacation at a tropical resort? Casper fell silent again. Then a woman's voice, Octavia's, intervened in the receiver. Mrs. Winslow? This is Octavia. May I speak to you? Speak. Mrs. Winslow, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. We were actually going to open a restaurant, but then we realized there was too much competition in Denver. We decided to explore opportunities in Asia. Explore in villas for $25,000 a month? It's temporary lodging while we look for a suitable location for the restaurant. Thailand is a very promising market for American cuisine. Octavia spoke confidently, professionally, as if she were making a business presentation, but I could hear the falseness in every word. Octavia, I said, if you're really looking for restaurant space, why did you write goodbye, old woman? Why did you disappear without saying a word? Casper was upset about having to change plans. He wrote the note in an emotional state without thinking about your feelings. We wanted to scout things out first before calling you with specific suggestions. And you needed a presidential villa and a sports car for the scouting? This time, the pause lingered. Then Octavia said already less confidently, Mrs. Winslow, we're willing to come back and explain everything in person, but in order to do that, we need access to the accounts. No. No how. No unlocking. I filed a fraud report with the police. Let the court sort out who's right. There were excited voices on the phone, Casper and Octavia talking rapidly about something. Then Casper spoke again, not in a pleading tone, but in a threatening one. Mom, you're making a big mistake. We're not tourists here. We have serious obligations. If you don't unblock the accounts, we'll have to take extreme measures. What extreme measures? I asked, though my heart beat faster. We'll find a way to access the money through the courts. We have partnership documents. We have witnesses. We'll prove you're exceeding your authority. Try, I said and hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, but from anger. They still thought I was a silly old woman who could be intimidated by legal threats. Oh well, let them try to sue from a Thai prison. The next day, Officer Davis called me with good news. Mrs. Winslow, we've received additional information from the bank. It turns out that your son withdrew a large sum of cash on the day of his disappearance, $200,000. This confirms the theory of a pre-planned escape. What's next? We've put out a manhunt for Casper Winslow and Octavia Blackwell. We've also contacted the American consulate in Thailand. They'll be monitoring their movements. The case was gaining momentum. My son, who a week ago had thought himself unpunished, was now an international fugitive. And $470,000 lay in blocked accounts, awaiting a court ruling. I felt at ease again. 30 years as a chief accountant had taught me one thing. Any problem can be solved if you act methodically and use all available tools. 4 days of silence had passed since our phone conversation. I was almost beginning to think that Casper and Octavia had resigned themselves to having their accounts blocked and had decided to make it up on their own. But Friday night the phone rang again. The same international number. This time it was only Casper speaking, and his voice sounded completely different. Not threatening, but confused. "Mom, we're in trouble. Serious problems." "What kind of problems?" I asked, trying to sound indifferent. "The villa owner is demanding payment for next month, and we don't have the money. We thought we could settle the matter with the bank quickly, but it turns out the old mother isn't as stupid as you thought." Casper ignored my sarcasm. "Mom, we only need $50,000, just to hold us over until the bills are settled. We'll pay it all back with interest." "Casper, you have a short memory. You already took almost $1 million from me with a promise to pay me back with interest. How did that end up?" "That's different. We were planning a long-term project then, but now we're just asking for temporary help." There was a note of desperation in his voice that I hadn't heard since I was a kid. When little Casper broke something expensive or got a bad grade, he spoke with that exact tone of voice, guilty but still hoping for a mother's forgiveness. "What do your friends say? Colleagues? Surely someone can lend 50,000. "Mom, we've already called everyone. No one can help with that amount." That didn't surprise me. Casper had always been surrounded by casual acquaintances, not real friends. People who are willing to have a beer and chat about soccer aren't necessarily willing to lend large sums of money at all. And Octavia's parents, they're furious. When they found out Octavia quit her job and flew to Thailand, they made a scene. Now they won't talk to her at all. So even her own parents turned their backs on Octavia when they realized the scale of her adventure. I wonder if she'd told them the money had been stolen from her husband's mother. "Mom," Casper continued in an increasingly pathetic tone, "we're ready to go home and explain everything, but we need the money for the tickets." "For tickets? Why, don't your credit cards work?" "They work, but the limits are small, and tickets from Thailand to America are expensive, especially if you buy at the last minute." I grinned. So when they planned their restaurant project, they made sure to buy one-way tickets, but didn't think about the return trip. Apparently, they expected to live like kings in Thailand on my money. "Casper, how much money do you have now?" "Not much. We withdrew cash before we left, but most of it went to pay for the villa and other expenses." "Other expenses like yachts, restaurants, and a sports car?" "Mom, don't be like that. We were sure it would work out, that we could pay you back with a profit. It's just that plans changed." There wasn't a shadow of remorse for the stolen money in Casper's voice. He was still trying to present the case as if it was a failed investment rather than outright fraud. "Casper, I won't give you a dime. What's more, if you call me again asking for money, I'll have the police trace your calls." "Mom, you can't do that to your own son. And you could steal $1 million from your own mother?" I hung up and disconnected the phone. Let them solve their own problems. The next 2 weeks were the quietest I'd ever experienced. Casper didn't call anymore. Only old pictures of their acquaintances appeared on social media, and there was no news from Thailand. I was almost beginning to think they had found some way out of the situation, but then Sheila McGregor called. There was concern in her voice. "Peridot, dear, are you aware of what's going on with Casper?" "What about him?" "I got a call from Susan Harris. Remember we worked in insurance together? Her son Daniel was friends with Casper in high school. Anyway, Daniel got a strange call from Casper." I was wary. "What kind of call?" "Casper asked to borrow $10,000, said he was having temporary difficulties, that everything would be resolved soon. Daniel said no. They hadn't spoken in 15 years, so why would he give him that kind of money?" So Casper really had tried to borrow money from everyone he could remember. Even from high school acquaintances he hadn't kept in touch with in a while. "Also," Sheila continued, "Susan said Casper sounded really nervous. Kept asking if Daniel had heard from other mutual acquaintances. It was like he was afraid someone was saying something about him. Apparently, rumors that Casper had absconded with his mother's money had already begun to spread among our mutual acquaintances. In Denver's small community, such news travels fast. The next day, I got a call from Michael at the bank. "Peridot, I have some interesting information for you. We got a request from a Thai bank. Someone tried to open an account in Casper Winslow's name, but the bank requested a credit history report from the United States. And what did you reply? And we replied the truth, that Casper Winslow's accounts were blocked on suspicion of fraudulent transactions. Thai Bank immediately refused to open the account. So Casper and Octavia tried to establish a financial base in Thailand, but it didn't work out. American banks don't take kindly to potential fraudsters. Meanwhile, the case was moving forward in court. My lawyer, Mr. Thompson, said the prosecutor's office was willing to try the case in absentia if the defendants didn't appear at the appointed time. Mrs. Winslow, we have a very strong case, he said during our meeting. All the documents are in order. The evidence is strong. If the case is tried in absentia, a conviction is virtually guaranteed. And what does that mean for the blocked money? Once the court renders a verdict, $470,000 will be returned to you as the injured party. Plus, if Casper and Octavia ever return to the United States, they will be arrested immediately. 470,000 of the stolen 980 was certainly not full compensation, but it was better than nothing. And at the end of November, an event occurred that finally convinced me that Casper and Octavia had run out of options. I received a phone call from a strange man with an American accent. Mrs. Winslow? My name is James Collins, and I work at the American consulate in Bangkok. Your son and his wife have come to us for help. What kind of help? They claim they have been victims of fraud by local businessmen and have lost all their money and documents. They're asking the consulate to pay for their tickets home. I almost laughed. So now they were posing as victims instead of criminals. Mr. Collins, are you aware that my son is wanted internationally on fraud charges? Yes, we are aware of that. That's why I'm calling you. Usually in cases like this, we contact the relatives to clarify the circumstances. The circumstances are simple. They stole almost $1 million from me and fled to Thailand. Now the money has run out and they want to return home at the expense of the American government. I see. And you're willing to pay for their tickets home? I thought for a few seconds. On the one hand, I didn't want to spend a dime on them. On the other hand, as long as they were in Thailand, the matter couldn't move forward. Mr. Collins, I'm willing to pay for the tickets on one condition. Once they arrive in Denver, they are to be arrested right at the airport. I don't want them to disappear again. That can be arranged. We have the appropriate agreements with local law enforcement. Then buy the tickets. The cheapest ones, economy class. The next day, the consulate bought Casper and Octavia Bangkok Denver tickets with one connection in San Francisco. The cost was $2,800 for 2 people. The consulate billed me, which I paid through the bank. I gave Officer Davis the exact time of arrival. The police were ready to meet the fugitives at the Denver airport. My prodigal son was coming home, but it wouldn't be his mother's arms that would greet him. It would be handcuffs. The plane with Casper and Octavia landed at the Denver airport at 7:30 on Thursday night. I didn't go to meet them. I knew the police would be waiting for them at the exit of the arrivals area. But Officer Davis promised to call as soon as the arrest was made. The call came at 8 p.m. Mrs. Winslow. Your son and his wife are in custody. They will be taken to the station now for processing. There will be a preliminary hearing in court tomorrow morning. How are they behaving? Calm. Casper said he's willing to cooperate with the investigation. Octavia has requested a lawyer, but overall there have been no conflicts. The next day I went to court. I wanted to see them with my own eyes after 2 months of separation. Casper and Octavia were sitting on the bench in orange prison robes. They looked very different, tan but gaunt with tired faces. Casper had aged a few years. His hair had grown back, he was unshaven, and there was something lost in his eyes. Octavia kept a more collected expression, but she didn't look her best either. Expensive manicures had come off, hair unkept, no makeup. The judge read out the charges: fraud on a large scale, concealment of income, violation of the conditions for traveling abroad. The prosecutor asked not to release the defendants on bail, as they have already absconded from the investigation once. Octavia's lawyer, a young woman in a strict suit, tried to prove that her client had acted under the influence of her husband and that she herself had been the victim of deception. But the judge was adamant. Both defendants remain in custody pending trial. As Casper was being led out of the room, he turned and looked at me. There was something in his eyes that I hadn't seen in years. Shame. Real, deep shame. He didn't wave, didn't try to say anything, just looked at me and turned away. A week later, I got a call from Casper's lawyer, a court-appointed defense attorney named Rodriguez, a young but experienced lawyer who specialized in financial crimes. Mrs. Winslow, your son wants to cut a deal with the investigation. He's willing to plead guilty and return any money he can still recover in exchange for a reduced sentence. A full confession of guilt, cooperation with the investigation, restitution. He doesn't have large sums at his disposal, but he's willing to pay restitution in installments over several years. That sounded reasonable. Better to get the money in installments than to get nothing at all. And Octavia? Octavia Blackwell insists on her innocence, claims she was misled by your son, that she was unaware of the true origin of the money. It's typical of Octavia to try to put the blame on Casper, even though she was the mastermind behind a lot of the spending in Thailand. 2 weeks later, another hearing was held. This time, Casper formally pleaded guilty to all charges. Standing before the judge with his head down, he answered the questions clearly, did not try to justify himself. Do you understand, Mr. Winslow, that a guilty plea could result in a prison sentence of up to 7 years? The judge asked. I understand, Your Honor. And are you willing to be held accountable for your actions? I am, Your Honor. I also want to apologize to the injured party, my mother. The judge set sentencing for a month from now. In that time, the probation office was to prepare a report on the defendant's identity and a recommendation for a sentence. And after another week, something happened that I didn't expect at all. I got a call from the prison saying that Casper had asked to see me. Legally, I had the right to refuse, but I decided to go. The Jefferson County Jail is a dingy gray concrete building a half-hour outside of Denver. I never thought I'd be visiting my own son there. The check-in procedure took half an hour, checking IDs, screening, explaining the visitation rules. Casper walked into the visiting room in an orange jumpsuit with his hands behind his back. He looked even worse than he had in court, thin, with dark circles under his eyes. Sat down across from me at a plastic table divided by thick glass. Hi, Mom, he said quietly, picking up the phone receiver. Hi, Casper. We were silent for a few seconds, just looking at each other. Then he spoke. Mom, I know you may not forgive me. I know what I did was awful, but I wanted you to hear it from me in person. I'm remorseful for what I did. Repent for stealing the money or for getting caught. He sighed. I repent betraying your trust, for hurting you, for acting like a selfish child instead of a grown man. That was what I wanted to hear 2 months ago. An admission of guilt without excuses or attempts to shift the blame. Casper, why? What made you think you were entitled to my money? He was silent for a long time, choosing his words. I guess because you always helped me out. Always gave me money when I asked for it. I thought it was normal for a mother to help her son. But $980,000 isn't help. That's almost all of my savings. I know, and I know I acted like a scumbag. But at the time I thought, it seemed like I was going to inherit that money anyway, so why wait? At least be honest. No pretty words about investments and joint business. The simple truth. He felt he was entitled to my money simply because he was my son. And Octavia? Octavia, it wasn't her fault. The idea was mine, I convinced her. She really thought we were going to go into business. I didn't believe a word of it. I'd seen how Octavia had planned the spending spree in Thailand, how excited she was about the luxurious life. But if Casper wanted to take all the blame, that was his right. Casper, what's next? My lawyer says I'll get 3 or 4 years, maybe less if I behave myself. And when I get out, I don't know. I'll try to get a job, start over. And the money? Can you get anything back? Mom, I don't have anything. Nothing at all. We didn't buy the apartment. We sold the cars before we left. We had no savings. But I promise, as soon as I get a job, I'll give you part of my paycheck. As much as I can. I looked at him, at my 38-year-old son, who was in jail for stealing from his own mother. And I thought maybe that's what he needed. Maybe only prison could teach him responsibility. Casper, I don't know if I can forgive you. Not right now. You didn't just steal the money. You betrayed my trust, my love. That hurts worse than losing the money. His eyes filled with tears. I understand, Mom. I'm not asking for forgiveness now. I have to earn it. Casper was sentenced in late January. 3 years in prison with the possibility of parole after a year and a half on good behavior, plus an obligation to pay $980,000 in restitution. Octavia got 2 years probation and an obligation to pay half of the damages. Her attorney was able to argue that she was a lesser participant in the fraud, though I knew that wasn't entirely true. The blocked $470,000 was returned to me immediately after the sentencing. Almost half of the stolen money was returned to my account. The other $510,000 was to be paid to Casper and Octavia over the years. In February, a month after the verdict, I got another call from the prison. Casper again asked to see me. I hesitated longer this time, but I went anyway. He looked better than the last time. He'd gotten a little better, and there was a certainty in his eyes. Turns out he'd enrolled in a vocational training program in prison. Mom, I'm learning welding. The instructor says I have a knack for it. Maybe when I get out, I can get a decent job. Welder. My son, who dreamed of becoming a successful businessman, was learning to weld metal. It's ironic. That's good, Casper. Welders make good money. Mom, I wanted to tell you something. I'm seeing a prison psychologist. She's helping me understand why I've spent my whole life looking for the easy way out. That was unexpected. Casper had never believed in psychologists, considered it fiction for wimps. And what did you realize? Realized that I've been a spoiled brat all my life. You and Dad always bailed me out, and I got used to problems solving themselves. I didn't learn to fight, to be patient, to work on myself. Dr. Miller, that was the name of the prison psychologist, had told him the same thing Jasper had once told him. Only Casper hadn't listened then. I also realized I was jealous of other people. I saw how people my age lived. Someone else had their own house. Someone else had a nice car. Someone else had a successful business. And I felt like I was worthy of the same, just because I wanted it. And now? Now I realize that you have to earn what you have, that no one owes anyone anything for nothing. We talked for almost an hour. Casper told me about life in prison, about the other inmates, about his plans for the future. He spoke calmly, without self-pity, without trying to put the blame on circumstances. When the visiting time was over, he said, "Mom, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to wait for me to come out. I just want you to know that I've changed. And if you ever give me another chance, I won't miss it." And in March, Octavia called out of the blue. She was out living with her parents in Boulder, looking for work. "Mrs. Winslow, can I come to you? I need to talk to you." I agreed, although I didn't really want to see her. Octavia came by bus. Apparently, she didn't have a car anymore. She looked very different, cheap clothes, no makeup, simple hair. "Mrs. Winslow, I want to apologize for what happened. I know my apology won't change much, but I had to make it." She spoke sincerely, with no attempt to justify herself or shift the blame to Casper. "Octavia, did you really not know that Casper was planning a theft?" She was silent for a long moment, then answered honestly, "I knew. Not in detail, but I knew he wasn't going to open a restaurant. I just didn't want to admit it to myself." "Why?" "Because I wanted a beautiful life. I was tired of counting every dime, saving for an apartment, driving an old car. When Casper suggested the plan, I gave in to temptation. At least be honest. Better the bitter truth than the sweet lie." "What about now?" "Now I'm trying to find a job. No luck so far. My reputation's ruined. Banks won't hire me. I'm thinking of getting a job as a salesman or receptionist." Octavia said that she divorced Casper before the trial. She said she couldn't forgive him for dragging her into this adventure. "One more thing, Mrs. Winslow. I found a job in a cafe. The pay is small, but I promise to give you half every month. It won't cover my debt, but at least it'll be something." It was unexpected. According to the court order, she had to pay me the money, but no one was forcing her to start immediately. "Octavia, why are you doing this?" "Because I want to sleep well. I realize I've caused you a great deal of harm, and I want to at least partially repay it." She left me her new phone number and address and left. A week later, $300 arrived in my account, marked reimbursement from O. Blackwell. $300 out of 500,000, a drop in the bucket, but it was the first drop.
Did you enjoy my story? What a journey it has been. I truly wonder, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have chosen silence to keep the peace, or would you have done what I did to reclaim your dignity? Let's meet in the comments below. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. I'm reading every single one. Which city are you listening from tonight? If my story resonated with you, you can support me and help me bring more stories like this to the world by sending a super thanks. Your sweet support means the world to me and allows me to continue this journey with all of you. On the screen now, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend you watch next. There are so many more on my channel, each with its own lessons and triumphs. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter. Thank you for being here with me. Until the next story, with love and respect.